Hello, friends. This is the AlphaList podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the AlphaList podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for their company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply.
Welcome to the AlphaList podcast. I'm your host, Toby, and today with me is Claire Fautsch. And Claire is working as a CTO for Joblift. Joblift is a job meta search coming from Hamburg, Germany, so just around the corner from where I am. Claire, happy to meet you on the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. Very happy to be here. Great honor for me today.
We just spoke after the CTO Summit a few weeks back. We sat on a panel together, also together with Jan Ram, former CTO of MyTaxi, or ShareNow. And we discussed cloud costs. And I think it's quite an amazing topic. And I just thought hey, let's bring this content to the podcast as well. And let's just repeat part of the discussion, but also maybe present some gold nuggets that you have in your organization. So maybe before we start talking about cloud costs, maybe briefly, what does Joblift do? And then, how did you get into computing? Why did you even wear a PhD in computer science, etc.? Why are you doing that? Why are you so crazy?
Well, that's a good question. So let's maybe start with Joblift. So as you put it so nicely, Joblift basically started as a meta search engine for jobs. So it was basically intended for people looking for a new job. They could come to our search engine, search for jobs, and then we would show them all the jobs, not just what kind of Stepstone has or whatever company has, but we aggregated all the jobs. And then it had quite an evolution over the time. So now we are kind of this marketplace. We have a big B2B side. So we get into contact with customers that are looking to hire people, which is a big problem out there, especially in Germany. It's very difficult to find people. In the meantime, we focus on blue collar and gray collar, so not academic jobs, but everything related to handyman, to logistics, to warehousing, and so on. So that's a bit what Joblift is doing. And then my journey into computer science, it was actually not very interesting. It started very, very randomly. So I was born and grew up in Luxembourg, did my studies there, finished my high school there. And the Luxembourgish school system was at the time, that's 20 years ago, a bit special. It's very much focused on languages. And when you go for a high school degree, you could opt at my time for science, which was basically mathematics and physics and chemistry. That's what I was doing, but still a lot into languages. And then I was a bit on the kind of lazy side. So I wanted to study something where I basically don't need to learn, but I need to understand. So I was going for mathematics. And it was only then actually when I started my studies in mathematics. So I was doing a bachelor's and then a master's degrees in mathematics in Switzerland. I realized that I really like programming. That's my first touch points I only had when I was 20 into my first years of my bachelor's studies. And then already for my master's, I switched a bit into making a minor. So a third of my credits was actually computer science, programming, all kind of things. And then just before I started my last semester for my master's, I was thinking whether I should just continue. I was 23 at the time, so still relatively young. If I should just continue into a master's in computer science, do the remaining credits. And then I got asked by a professor what I wanted to do a PhD with him. So that's how I ended up doing the PhD. It was just kind of, So that's how I got into programming. Why do I like it? I don't know. I can just get very passionate about it, solving daily problems with deterministic code, which now with the introduction of AI, it's not always so deterministic anymore. But I just like solving this kind of riddles. Solving problems, helping other people to be more efficient. Yeah, so very straightforward on my way into programming and computer science. And
well, I mean, it's always straightforward for women, not like typically, right? That you end up being like actually studying mathematics. Like my daughter recently came to me and said, "Hey, Daddy, I don't like math so much," and she just started in the first year, right, in school.
Yes.
So it's kind of unusual, but also a great role model.
Yeah, I'm always very happy that at least one of my kids, she's in fourth grade now, but she already in first and second grade, she was like, "Oh my God, I love mathematics." I was like, "Oh, I'm so happy." At least one. The other one is just in second grade. She's still figuring out what she likes, but that's fine.
Coming to cloud costs and like from my perspective, like the first meaningful question is like, why actually cloud cost optimization? Like, I mean, I think Joblift was founded in a time when money was cheap, and my assessment would be that most likely at a certain point it ended up not being so cheap anymore, and then things changed. Is that the case, or?
Yeah, that summarizes it very well. I think at least for my course, how I got into cloud costs. So yes, Joblift was founded in 2015, so almost 10 years ago. Money was cheap, but also cloud was cheap, and there were a lot of programs on getting startups onto the cloud. So Joblift started straight from the beginning, which I think in 2015 was quite an achievement. We started on Kubernetes. It was still beta at the time, I think, or at its very, very early stages. So we started on Kubernetes, and I think for the developers, we were very liberal. So basically, you need more resources. Well, you have all the rights you need to get more resources, right? So more CPU, more memory, whatever, just change the values.
We have those 100K free credits for the first year.
Exactly. So we were in different startup programs. We stick with Google Cloud. Actually, we are still with Google Cloud. So my experience is also mostly based on Google Cloud, but I think a lot of it just translates to other cloud providers as well. So money was cheap. We just had Series A, then Series B. It was all about innovation, right? As I said, we started as a meta search engine, basically an arbitrage business where you try to buy traffic less expensive than for what you sell it. But then we wanted to also differentiate ourselves from the market, so we put a lot of investment into machine learning. We have quite a big machine learning programs running, or services running that classify the jobs for us. We do use several other AI that we have integrated into our system. We trained our own models, right? So we are using GPUs, which cost a lot of money. So all was going into innovation and not looking so much at the costs. And then came the times where it was a bit more, we needed to become a bit more cost sensitive, and we started looking into our cloud costs a bit, because it was a big chunk of our costs we had, in addition to the marketing and revenue related costs. But on the OpEx side, cloud costs a big chunk. So we looked into it, and it was quite interesting. But it's also it's not the one-time thing, right? It's kind of a periodic thing. So money gets tight, you look into it, you do a couple of improvements, low-hanging fruits, the costs go down, situation gets better, and then you basically start again, spending more money. And then just recently, end of last year, we did like a big analysis on where we could save. That's a bit the journey.
And maybe before we dig deeper, how big was your cloud cost initially before you started optimizing? Like, can you briefly?
Yeah. So the very first time we passed the 100K a month, which is quite a bit for a startup. I mean, at the time we had like roughly between 60 and 80 employees, and we were not on a break-even side of things yet. So that's quite a big chunk. We then put it down at 70K with quite a bit of effort, and then now we are roughly around 30K a month, so 30,000 euros a month.
Wow, that's quite a bit of an optimization. Well, I mean, obviously David Heidemeyer Hansen would still advise us to move to Hetzner, right?
Yes. And then I saw his recent tries to get Hetzner to the US. I like that.
Yeah. That's also how many companies solve that. But I think you're also like way less flexible, and that you also have to look at total cost of ownership. So I guess that wasn't an option for you to move to on-prem again, right?
Not no. And I mean, it wouldn't be again for us, right? We started on the cloud from the beginning. So no, it's definitely not something we're considering right now. I was also following their journey back in the on-prem. No, not an option for us right now. I don't even know if it would really come us cheaper. We use auto scaling a lot. And we actually need it because we have those ways where we have more jobs coming in the morning, or seasonality, all these kinds of things, right? So it's really convenient.
Okay. Was there like when you started, was there like a third thing to actually do? Like, I don't know, committing on contracts or something? Like that's from my perspective often the thing that a CTO hates to do, like, hey, a 3-year contract, and that's cheaper. Well, no, 30%, no, let's not do that. Like, was that the first thing, or what was the biggest gold nugget at the beginning?
Yeah, I think certainly those contracts, right, where you commit yourself to a certain duration. We always just committed for a year on the contract with our Google Cloud reseller. Was certainly worth some money, but not necessarily the big gold nugget. One big gold nugget for us is certainly the CUDs, the committed usage discount that Google has, where basically you commit to a certain amount of resources for either a year or 3 years. So it's also some kind of contract. So that helps us, saves a lot of money. And the other gold nugget is to actually look at what kind of machine types we use. So Google has this preemptible or spot nodes, they are also called, where it's their excess of machines they have, right? And rather than have them standing around, they give you them for good money, but they come at a certain risk. They can kind of disappear at any moment. So whatever you have running on them does need to be able to cope with being shut down and restarting on a different node, which isn't a problem for us, right? We are running on a microservice architecture, mostly Java based. They all can handle that. They are all built in a way that they can just scale up and scale down, restart, whatever. So that's not a problem for us, but that's a big save of money to look into those machine types, right? So to actually look, where can we use those cheap machine types? And most of the time you actually get them, right? I think we very rarely have the problem that those cheap machine types are not available. It happens, for example, pre-Christmas sales or all these cyber days. Like we sometimes see that, but very rarely that we actually have that. That's for us kind of and that's, you're not there, you don't need to commit, right? You just say, okay, instead of using that machine type, which is kind of whatever standard, like I switch to those preemptible or spot nodes, and then you save a lot of money, but you don't need to commit to a 1 year or 3 year CUD or reseller contract or anything like that.
Interesting. And besides that, anything, any secret tips, anything that you found very helpful?
So what I found very helpful is not so much on the side of actually saving money, but first to build those reports to actually understand where does the money go. I mean, we are using a reseller for Google. I don't know if I can say their name here, but they offer great dashboards, but also just with the Kubernetes APIs nowadays and what Google Cloud Platform offers directly. And what I have also seen on Azure and Amazon, you can actually see quite neatly where the money goes, right? So you need to make sure to structure your whatever you're deploying into projects, for example, like we have production and staging, for example, so we can differentiate. And then we have one project for machine learning things. We have one project where we, for example, access external APIs so that we can immediately see where something goes wrong. And then you can identify those things where you are super surprised that they actually cost so much money, which is typically storing data, right? You're like, storing data is not expensive, but then all of a sudden you store 5 terabyte worth of data and you realize that it does cost quite some money in the end, right? And then even worse, accessing that data all of a sudden is super expensive. So I think that's the step before actually saving the money is identifying where does the money actually go and realizing that there is actually some potential for saving. Yeah.
Okay, and then make it. Did you make it a ceremony for your team as well, or like how did that? Like, how do you follow through? Right? I mean, like just once building dashboards, etc. Sounds nice, but
yes.
How do you bring it to life?
So it all started with this one task, which was kind of like, let's look into why this thing doesn't get less expensive, even so we have less jobs on the website. And then it started from there, and then we had those dashboards, and then it was basically 2 people, me and another person working on it, and we have those Slack channels for our teams, and we started sharing some graphs there. And then we started sharing it we have once a week, we had this shared stand-up where the whole team comes together. We started sharing our efforts there, and also how we save the money. And then we just triggered other developers to also look into the services they are responsible for, and approaching me and the platform engineer that was actually working with me, and like saying, hey, well, I think if we do this, we could save some money, and let's look, we built this service to scale for like 100 million items that we process per day, but today we're just processing 12 million items. So all these auto-scaling parameters we have in place, we could scale much slower. And then instead of scaling to 20 instances, maybe just scale to 5 instances. So all these discussions, and it was kind of an avalanche. So we started to be very blunt about it and sharing it in channels. And then it became a bit this challenge, like, hey, we saved another 50 euros. And then it started from like, oh, look, we spent 2,500 euros per day. We managed to get it down to 2,000. Do we manage to get the 1,500, right? So it was really just this kind of, we challenged each other a bit to get it down, and everyone wanted in on it. It was also easy in the sense that the company was in a financially hard situation, just given the whole economics and COVID and the war and everything. So everyone was like very loyal to the company and wanting to help us save money, right? And so people just got into it. And then we really made it this ceremony, right? We included it in our updates. We shared it with the whole company. Say, look at what we managed, and we tried to also get a bit to this mindset shift to keep it especially in the developers' back of their head, like, oh, I have a new service. Do I actually need to request 2 CPUs and a 16 gigabyte of RAM for this? Or is maybe half of that enough? And then I monitor it and I see. So getting it into their daily routines and getting it into their mindset, and then also celebrating when we managed again to get costs down, right? We really tried to make it something positive, and that worked well. It also because of the great team we had, and they jumped on it, right? I think that makes a lot of difference. But we really started kind of celebrating it if we get it down. Let's not talk about that. We should not have get it up in the first place.
Yeah, but that's very like, really creating that financial literacy and awareness of costs, right? That's basically almost what one would call FinOps these days, right?
Yes, yeah. So what was very important to me was that we don't make it those 2 people work on it and everyone else doesn't care, but make it a joint effort, right? It got triggered from one side, but then we just kind of took everybody with it, and all the people got it kind of like in their DNA to have this cost sensitivity, right? Rather than have one external instance looking at it, and every month when the bill comes saying, no, wait, we need to get it better, right? It's a bit like, having it in the culture, right? So it's not one dedicated FinOps person or a FinOps team, but it's like every single developer has a bit of FinOps in their DNA, kind of
So
thing.
you build it, you ship it, you run it, you pay it.
You pay it. Yes, exactly.
Okay. But you didn't give people financial incentives to.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
No, we didn't.
Okay. That would be the hard thing if you really let people pay for it, and then.
Yeah. I mean, there was one or the other time where I think like shit for the money I now saved in 2 weeks. But no, unfortunately we didn't. Also because a bit of the background we came for was that we were in financial unstable situation at the time and needed to look a bit where the money goes, right?
So the answer to my question, if I ask you who should own it, it should be super owned by the team, and basically you spark attention, right? In your daily routines or your quarterly routines. Did you have any KPI? I mean, you just mentioned basically something like you didn't have so many jobs on the website and cloud costs were high. Didn't you make this a KPI? Like, hey, cloud cost per job on the website or something? Or
yes, that's we tried that to have like this. Each job cost us X amount of money. It was super hard, and we didn't really manage. First of all, because there's just like the ground cost. Like when you have your car, it also costs you money when it's outside and you're not driving it, right? So you just have like the background noise of money to have everything up and running. And then every job is so different because some jobs we get an update and then they don't get updated for 3 weeks and then they go offline. Other jobs, they get updated every 3 hours, right? For whatever reason, especially in the US, for example, it's a market where the jobs are very, very fluctuating and they get put online in the morning and taken offline in the evening. So the jobs pass our pipeline of from the moment we get them to the moment we have them live on our website, where they pass different steps and get enriched with data and so on. So it's super fluctuating. For some jobs, we basically just have the company information and the description and some salary information, and then you do a click out. For others, we have a full job description. So it's super hard to nail it. We tried it. And I think if you manage to do that, I remember Jan Ram from FreeNow saying that they managed to actually put a price per ride on their cloud costs, like what it translated to. I think that's super interesting if you manage to do that. I looked into it, but I couldn't really make that work for us, unfortunately.
But what about cloud cost per 1,000 euros in revenue or something? Like, wouldn't that make sense normally?
Yeah, it probably would, but also there for us it's super difficult because there's the whole machinery of that's generating revenue, but then we also have cloud costs that don't pay on the revenue but on the costs, and so it pays on the gross margin in the end. And but yes, that would be also, I guess, we are not there yet, let's face it that way.
Okay.
But I think if you manage to do that, that's a very good indicator. It's also a good indicator to show you when your cloud costs get out of control again, right? So now me, for example, when I look at our cloud costs, I just say I want to say at that threshold, and I see if they go up, I need to go and see, okay, what changed? Is there a good reason to it, or is there a bad reason to it? If you have that indicator and you say it needs to be, I don't know, 25, and as long as it's under 25, whatever 25 means, it's good. Even if the costs go up, it's still at that threshold. I think it's definitely easy, and it's definitely something one should do if if one has the measure that relates to it.
I think it becomes valuable if you can track it over time, right? If you see like how much it goes up or down over time, and then look at changes you potentially did in the cloud or the business, if it dramatically goes up. But yeah, just as an like absolute indicator, it's hard, I guess. What other things do you think make sense to look at? Like, is there space for negotiations with the clouds these days? Like, and how much is it from your perspective?
To be honest, it's super hard for me to tell, also because I'm not that long in the business. I hadn't had that many of those discussions. From what I heard from other people, there isn't so much room for negotiation. So as you mentioned before, right, you have those kind of buy-in plans where you commit yourself to a certain duration, which is usually 1 year or 3 years, and then you get a discount. And then you have those resellers or revendors that basically you don't buy from Google or Amazon or Microsoft directly, but you buy via a reseller that have special deals with them. They buy larger amounts, so they can offer you a discount. I think it's usually from what I heard, it's usually around the 3 to 8% that you can get, but they are mostly linked to those kind of contracts.
And then some of the clouds want you to spend the same money in support then, right? Like you get enterprise support in return. So
yes, exactly.
Enterprise in return. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. We just don't need support. It's one of the things where we looked at like how many incidents do we had and how many did we resolve ourselves? Where could our reseller help us? And then
I heard that it's like for strategic direction, kind of. Like, hey, are we using this service effectively or not, or something like that? It can be helpful, but yes. I also don't often think about like, hey, what can I ask AWS now? As it's all self-service, you're not used to that, basically, right?
Yes, exactly. And we have quite some experience in the team, which is good. So they can solve a lot of the issues we actually had where you could think that you might need support. We can just solve them ourselves. So.
Is there anything you like technically, apart from picking those spot instances or ephemeral instances, anything technical that you did to, I don't know, optimize your Kubernetes cluster or anything, optimize resource usage? Like there are those vertical pod autoscalers and horizontal pod autoscalers that I guess you had that all, and then the overall cluster size as well. Is that correct, or anything else?
So there are different levels, I would say. One of the biggest for us was actually this unallocated cost thing. So basically, let's put it mathematically simple. You request always resources like CPU and memory, and then you also request nodes, right? So let's say you have a node that has 8 CPUs available and 32 gigabyte of memory, then you pay for that. And then you have your services. In our case, let's stick with Kubernetes and Docker. And then I say, okay, my pod, my service that I deploy, it requires 3 gigabyte of memory and one CPU, and then I deploy 3 instances of it. Then I still have a bunch of those resources that are not used, but I'm paying for them, right? So this is this unallocated resources. And you can never use the full what did I say 32 gigabyte and 8 cores, because there's also, if you have Kubernetes, there's also some Kubernetes operational stuff running and so on. You have a certain amount of overhead, but you should use it to its maximum, because everything that you don't use but pay for, it's going to waste, right? And that was for us also quite a bit of we did quite some optimizations there. So everywhere where we use auto scaling, we try to choose the node size in a way that we can use at its best the resources that they bring, also in correlation between memory and CPU. So often we have services that require some memory because they do quite some heavy in-memory caching, but they don't require so much CPU. So we try to see, okay, what are good machine types that we can have for the nodes. We spend also quite some time into the nodes where we don't use auto scaling to, for example, we use Elasticsearch to see, okay, how much does it really need? And then there was a lot of unallocated resources. So we switched to smaller node size. These kind of things that brought us quite some saving, especially on our staging cluster, right? We have this kind of pre-prod test cluster, which is our staging environment. There we could save quite a lot of money these unallocated resources. Another thing that often kind of slips through is the whole network costs, especially when you have this inter-cluster communication, right? You have the clusters in different zones. That's also something that's worth looking at, or everything that's like going outside to the internet or another cloud provider. That's also sometimes getting quickly expensive. So those two, and then gzipping the request between services, for example, is also goes also into the network costs. And then also disks. So we tend to use SSDs everywhere because they are just faster, but they're also more expensive, right? When we have persistent volumes, for example. So basically you attach a disk to your service. So also questioning there, do I really need SSDs? Is there a reason that I don't need those fast ones? Am I using those well? Because also those, you request a terabyte, you pay for the terabyte, right? You at least in the model we had, right? It's not that you just pay for what you use. On our databases, we also requested way too much memory and way too much CPU compared to what you're actually using, right? You're always afraid that your application is bad on performance, so you give it a lot of CPU, but then it doesn't need it. So those kind of things, I think they were the biggest levers for us. And then those committed usage discounts, right? Those CUDs that we looked at, and we assumed that we would still exist within a year, so which we do. So we committed to a certain amount of memory and a certain amount of CPU, where we were sure that we were actually using it, right? Which was kind of like the basic thing we need for running operationally.
Very, very helpful. And you initially said that, like slowly coming to an end, you initially said that it all started with you having a lot of resources and giving people a lot of resources, which was that connected to a startup program of one of the clouds, or Google Cloud in your case? Like, hey, we give you 100K for this year. Just make sure you spend them all in 1 year. What was that part of the problem, or?
No, I mean, yes, we have been through certain of those startup programs, and definitely benefit from them also, because we have been a very early adopter of this whole GKE, so the Google Kubernetes engine, which is kind of like the managed Kubernetes from them. So but that was not the reason. It was more the philosophy and that we build up our tech team and our development team to make the developers very, very autonomous and productive in their things, and not having like a, I don't know, DevOps or CTO, whoever approving whenever a new service goes live the resources, right? So it was a bit of ownership thing, and we didn't enforce the accountability too much on the, like, yes, make sure to double check. But it was really just this thing, like, why make the life complicated? Just give the developers what they need to be as efficient as possible. And I would always do it like that, right? I think it's actually good, but it's also good, I think, to educate them from the beginning that those things actually do cost money, right? That's when you have to fill out 25 forms to request a new server with 2 CPUs and 8 gigabyte of memory, you are much more aware that it actually costs money than if you just need to change one number and hit deploy and that's it, right? So.
Yeah. I also know back in the days when I was in similar roles, we faced heavy cloud costs. It's just like if you make it too easy or even attractive for people to spend more money, then it's not great, for sure. But the startup programs could also be a tip for our listeners, because most of the clouds have it, or all of the major clouds have it, at least, to my knowledge. Yes, it is kind of can bring you to a decent cost level. But also for many companies that already are on the cloud, you can still claim those credits. You can still get that money if you are on Google Cloud for a year or something, at least as far as I know. So I think like you can save a lot of money if you just go for it and just get those credits. connect to Google, not just start using it. And then maybe like a concrete advice from yourself that you would give to other CTOs or tech leaders who are just starting with their cloud optimization journey. I mean, you gave quite beefy content already, so there are quite some tips in there, but maybe like one or two concrete things that you think we didn't step on.
So from my perspective, I think you should from the beginning keep an eye on it. Just have a dashboard that you open once in the morning and you keep an eye on it and you understand where the money goes, and then take a conscious decision, which we sometimes did, right? We sometimes knew that our costs were going up. Take a conscious decision to either look into it or just go with it because you want to quickly try something out. And yes, you take the more expensive machine type, but you need the GPUs, right? Just be conscious about it and make it part of your mentality of the developers, and not in a blaming way, but in them just taking care of it and being part of the daily kind of operations. Like you build it, you run it, right? Like you said before, like that is. So make it transparent. I think if you manage to actually put it down to, or in the relation to a business KPI, that could be very helpful, because it makes monitoring very easy, and it's always easier to implement those things just from the start than start with it later on, because then you collect the data over time, and then you can much easier put it into relation.
Thank you. Good sum up. And then I still have a little surprise for you. So I know Dennis Bauer, who's your predecessor at Joblift, and he actually told me like a bit of a secret that in your old meta search interface, that's like a hidden field that you can manipulate and enter at a year and a person, and then you travel back in time to that exact year and that then the life of that person, which is a crazy thing that he built back in the days, funny enough. And we now imagine that we travel back in your life until the year of 2011 or 2010, when you worked as an IT consultant as Accenture, funny enough. And we now observe yourself for a while, and you have the chance to whisper something into young Claire's 2010 years. What would it be?
Good thing you didn't send me back in 1995 or something. I think I would whisper different. I would probably whisper in my ear just to do whatever I want to do, and don't let yourself be restricted by anything. Just someone telling you, no, that's not possible, or no, you don't have the capacity for that. Just go for it, right? That's what I would tell myself. Don't question, just go for it. I mean, if you fail, get up and restart, right? But if you don't try, you have failed from the start, right? You didn't try.
Great.
I think that's what I would tell myself.
Great. Plus, maybe invent a relative KPI for cloud costs. I would add that. I would whisper that.
Yeah, that's a good.
Cool. Claire, thanks a lot for the discussion, and have a great afternoon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the AlphaList podcast. If you like this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about, or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. AlphaList is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to cto@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on AlphaList, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.